Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with If I Could Choose Only One Work by composer X, it would have to be work pi. Well, composer X is Vincenzo Bellini, and you know what work pi must be. Yes, it's Norma. But I want to talk about Norma for the silent majority out there, not for all of you opera lovers, and others who otherwise already know what Norma is. You know, the bel canto world of opera has a certain, sullied reputation amongst normal music listeners. First of all, Italian composers generally get dumped on. They get dumped on because music history and musicology was a German invention, and it was invented by a bunch of academics desperate to prove the superiority of German music by demonstrating that anything that other music did not have made it inferior. And there are lots of things Italian music does not have that German music has in abundance, like, for example, intricate counterpoint and symphonic development and pretentious tedium and all of that stuff. But Italian music has fabulous singable tunes, gorgeous, brilliant orchestration, as often as not, and drama and blood and thunder and guts, and it's just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But it doesn't have, learned counterpoint as often as not. So leaving those two grotesque generalizations aside, the other thing that is such a turnoff, I think, or for me it was, is the enthusiasm of dyed-in-the-wool opera people for this stuff, because they argue incessantly over, and nowhere more so than over Norma. Who's the best Norma? Is it Maria? Is it Joan? Is it Beverly? Is it Montserrat, and whatever her name was? Montserrat? Is it, you get all of this blather about these things, screaming about singers and things and tiny details. Let's just talk about Norma the story for a moment. Norma is one of the greatest creations of the lyric stage. As a character, she is the ultimate role for a great singing actress. That's why Maria Callas was able to do it so, even though sometimes the voice was not in the best of shape. The plot's really simple. Norma is in love. She's a Druid priestess. She's in love with Paglioni, a Roman, with whom she has two children. And in having these two children, she has defiled her vows and whatnot, and all that stuff. And so Paglioni is no longer in love with Norma. He's in love with Adalgisa, who is another Druid priestess. And when Norma finds out, of course, she's furious. I mean, she has vengeance, and she's foaming at the mouth. And it's all very, very, wonderful, because there's nothing better in opera than women in extremis. That's what opera is all about, basically. And Norma has more extremists than most. It's in two big acts, by the way. So she wants to kill her children. She wants to kill Paglioni. She wants to kill everybody. She wants to kill Adalgisa. They're all very annoyed. So in Act 2, the Romans are fighting the Druids, and Adalgisa confesses this to Norma, but Norma loves Paglioni, and she wants Adalgisa to marry Paglioni. She decides to be very selfless because she can't bring herself to kill her own kids. This is not Medea. Mind you, she's kind of like a Druid Medea, but she's not Medea. She's not going to kill her own kids because she got dumped. And so she says to Adalgisa, marry Paglioni so that the children, will not be without a father when he goes back to Rome. And, they can take the kids. And she's very selfless about the whole thing. But Paglioni still refuses, and Adalgisa doesn't want to do it. She wants Paglioni to go back to Norma, and he doesn't want to do it. So Norma gets angry again, and then they have a big fight where they actually use the tam-tam. Crash! It's fabulous. The summoning of the Druids has a gong in it. One of the first times in opera. Not the first. I mean, there are earlier ones, but it's one of the first. And anyway, so that's exciting. And Paglioni gets brought in as a captive, and they're going to sacrifice him, and they have to sacrifice. Everyone has to sacrifice everybody. And Norma, says that she's going to sacrifice a Druid priestess who has besmirched her vows, and everyone thinks it's Adalgisa, but then she says it's herself. She's willing to go to her death, and Paglioni realizes in the face of such nobility and sacrifice that he wants to die with her, and they walk together on the pyre in a sort of Götterdämmerung-like thing. That's where Wagner got it from. and they poof, and they burn up, and that's the end of the opera. And she asks, Adalgisa and, her dad to take care of the kids. Anyway, that's Norma. But it's a role which, you can tell from this incredibly thorough and sympathetic description, allows a singing actress to do everything. It has vengeance, nobility, suffering, and love, and passion buckets, and oh my God, it's amazing. And so it is the archetypal work by Bellini. It is the archetypal work of bel canto opera, along with, for example, Lucia di Lammermoor and a couple others by Donizetti. It's glorious music, really glorious music. I mean it. And I just think it's kind of fascinating how people sort of poo-poo, this Italian school, because people make fun of how crazy the Italian theater was, and how formulaic some of the forms of the day were, and how plots had to be adapted to meet the demands of singers and all this stuff, as if German opera were normal, as if any kind of theatrical stuff is just sort of usual. People standing around singing at each other with dragons and Valkyries is like somehow better. I mean, come on, folks. No, it's a total work of genius. And if you don't know it, if you are one of those people who has been hesitating in listening to bel canto opera because of all of the nuttiness that surrounds it, keep two things in mind. One, it's glorious music, and you should take it at your own pace, but give it a shot. Give it a chance with a completely open mind, number one. And number two, one of the reasons that there's so much insanity around it is because it's marvelous. I mean, it courts the craziness because it's just so cool. It's so much fun to talk about, to get into, to obsess over. It really is. I mean, we could all do with a little obsession once in a while. And so I present this to the evil god Cancrozans, who wants to destroy every piece of classical music, but for one typical work per composer, as not just the iconic work of bel canto, but an iconic work in a style which has a rich and fabulous repertoire that we should all have the opportunity to savor. Don't you think? I do. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.